So the original Clerks that came out in 1994 was kind of a surprise independent film hit, right? I mean, Kevin Smith, along with Quentin Tarantino and Richard Linklater, basically ushered in a brand new generation of would-be filmmakers. So Clerks 3 came out in 2022, and is this a soulless cash grab, or is it a return to form? The return of one of the OG independent filmmakers. Let's talk about it. Written and directed by Kevin Smith, Clerks 3 continues the story of Dante and Randal at the Quick Stop in New Jersey. After Randal survives a heart attack, he enlists Dante, Elias, and Jay and Silent Bob to make a movie about the convenience store that started it all. The movie stars Brian O'Halloran, Jeff Anderson, Jason Mewes, Trevor Fuhrman, and Austin Zajur. Kevin Smith movies are kind of hard for me to review because he was so, for me, instrumental in my love of movies and in my kind of searching out just all kinds of different filmmakers. Didn't have to be a big box office, sort of, major director. It can be anybody, right? Anybody can make a really, really amazing movie. And again, the original Clerks, made for $27,000, it was a big deal. And it was kind of a, I don't know, it was a phenomenon back in the mid 90s, right? So for me, it was hard to watch Kevin Smith kind of falter when it came to the Hollywood system. Some of his movies were pretty good, and some of the movies were not so good. So it's kind of one of those things like, I'm always rooting for the guy, and Kevin Smith has also, become more of a, I don't know, more of a podcaster than a director. He's a personality that's on all kinds of things. He's on award shows. He's, done all kinds of things that are way outside the scope of a typical director or filmmaker. But it always seems that Clerks has always been the kind of movie where he really delves into parts of himself. And I think Kevin Smith is at his best when he's talking about himself, when he's being really honest about the I guess the material that he's presenting. With Clerks 3, I don't want to sound harsh, okay? And I don't want to sound like it's so much negative right up front, but I do want to talk about the negative things before I get into the positive things. Because for me, the first and second act were weak. They were just weak to me. They didn't have that same snap, that same energy that some of his earlier films had. I mean, it's got the same kind of humor, but it's done in this weird, almost stilted kind of way. The actors feel stilted. The editing seems really loose. Like it just doesn't seem like he needed another pass at the editing, because it just feels very low energy, and that's a problem for a comedy like this. It's weird that there are some really humorous scenes and some really funny lines, but the comedy overall just feels more awkward than anything. Like it just, I don't know, it just feels strange to me. I will say though that the character of Elias, who was in Clerks 2, introduced in Clerks 2, he goes through some, I'll just say, some changes in this movie, and it's really fun to see him show up differently. And I'll just leave it at that. The third act, however, is where things really change and things really start to come together, and it feels more like the movie that Kevin Smith really wanted to make. It was almost like, I have some things that I want to say, but I've got to dress it up in this Clerks jacket, and in order to get people to get to what I really want them to get to, I've got to kind of ease them into it with all the dialogue and the language and all the things that the Clerks movies are kind of famous for. We'll get to the like the making of stuff later, but the first week of shooting is where all the really emotional scenes took place. So it's almost like when they were shooting the movie, they put all of the heavy stuff at the beginning and then tried to have fun the rest of the shoot, and I feel like that was a purposeful thing. They didn't want to, I don't know, maybe he was worried about how the emotional scenes would come across. Maybe it was just a timing thing, for some of the actors that had to come in and fill some roles. Maybe that's part of it, but it just felt like, I don't know, it almost felt tired, those first two acts. It's weird. And then that third act is where things really, man, they really feel urgent. There's an urgency in the way that the storytelling is done, and I like that. Now, very famously, Kevin Smith had a heart attack and basically changed his life, right? Became a vegan, lost a bunch of weight, and, sort of it refocused him, and it kind of, it did a lot for him. And I think in a lot of ways, any sort of traumatic experience like that will have an effect on you. And it shows here. And a lot of the really emotional scenes that you could say, maybe some overly emotional scenes, they really hit for me and they worked really, really well. I'm not sure if that says more about me or more about Kevin Smith, but it really, really worked. And it felt like the movie was hitting on all cylinders. A little personal thing, there's some scenes because the whole thing is, Randall has a heart attack and, wants to make a movie. And so a lot of these making movies with your friends sort of thing really hit home for me because of Adventures in Game Chasing. Of course, if you've been around the channel long enough, you know that I did work on that movie with the Game Chasers. And there's a scene in particular when Dante is watching Randall, sort of directing and kind of in his element. And there's this really proud smile on his face. And I got to say, there was a moment like that for me during the making of Adventures of Game Chasing. Billy's been a friend of mine for a long time, so to watch him in his element was really, really a cool thing to see and a cool thing to experience. So it was almost like, I don't know, it was almost like, wow, that's like the way that I felt on set. It was kind of cool. And this whole idea, it's sort of, in a way, it's sort of the theme of the movie, is kind of like that you're on borrowed time and that you shouldn't waste your time. It's after my own health scare, which again, I don't want to go into that here, but it's one of those things that really spoke to me, and it actually inspired me, and it's a little bit of a fire under me. So we'll see what happens. I've already said that Kevin Smith has felt hit or miss for me throughout his career. There's movies that I really, really love and really, really admire. And then there are ones that I'm like, why was that even done? But this movie, even though it doesn't have quite the sharpness of his earlier movies, it in a weird kind of way, it felt like coming home. It was very nostalgic and it was fun. And the heart that is in this movie, because like I said, there's some really emotional stuff in here. I really, really enjoyed the movie overall. I'll also say this, if you're not a big fan of Kevin Smith or the Clerks, Mallrats, Chasing Amy, the whole View Askew universe, if you're not versed in all that stuff, there's going to be a limit. There's going to be a ceiling to your enjoyment, I think, in this movie, because you're just not going to connect with it. This movie is definitely made for Kevin Smith fans or View Askew universe fans. But yeah, it's just know that going in. Now I want to go into the 4K presentation, the 4K disc, the Steelbook, that's apparently only available at Best Buy. But in order for me to do that, you kind of have to have seen the movie. So there are some spoilers. Yeah, and you'll see what I'm talking about. But there's some spoilers just on the cover. So yeah, if you haven't seen the movie and you want to, maybe you should turn it off now. So yeah, here's the thing. So in the movie, you find out at the beginning that Rosario Dawson has passed away from Clerks 2. Dante's girlfriend would be whatever. So that's a very important story point. The Steelbook is really, really cool. I like it, and I like the fact that the slipcover kind of works with the. I don't know. I really like that. But then on the inside, you do have your 4K disc. Or, I'm sorry, 4K disc and your Blu-ray as well. Very, very cool little package there. This isn't quite as feature rich as I was hoping for, but the whole thing was I was looking to watch the movie and I was like, okay, I'm not going to rent it. I might as well buy the digital copy. And I found out that the digital copy didn't have any special features. So I was like, okay, well then I'll just buy the Blu-ray. And then I found out that it was available on 4K. So I ended up spending probably 4 times what I was originally going to spend, but I felt, you know what, it's worth it. This is going to be a fun movie to watch and a fun package to make your way through. The documentary is about an hour and a half, hour and 40 minutes, almost as long as the movie. It's really, really good if you enjoy the making of aspect when it comes to the making of movies. I feel like there's a lot of people that will probably be bored by it because there's a lot of day to day kind of stuff being shown. But I really enjoyed watching that one. There's about 30 minutes of alternate and deleted scenes on the disc, and I wasn't too taken with these. A lot of cases, um, deleted scenes are deleted for a reason, and I feel like these were mostly alternate versions of scenes. And yeah, it was. I mean, it was fun to go through, but once. The commentary has a lot of the cast, minus Jason Mewes, which was weird, but you had Kevin Smith, Brian O'Halloran, uh, uh, Jeff Anderson, Trevor Fuhrman, and Austin Zajur, who plays Elias's sort of sidekick. Um, but yeah, it's really strange because it's the first commentary I've watched where it didn't feel like it was screen specific like most of the time. It was mostly Kevin Smith just talking. So it's strange. It felt like almost 80% Kevin Smith. And I felt that that was kind of a shame because I wanted to hear more from the actors, and sort of some of the stories that they had about the making of the movie. But yeah, it was mostly Kevin Smith, and the guy's on the internet a lot, so it almost felt like a bit too much. There's sort of a Clerks retrospective documentary called "We're Not Even Supposed to Be Here Today" or something like that. I really enjoyed that. It's about an hour long, and it's kind of the history of Clerks and almost like the history of Kevin Smith's career. I actually really enjoyed that because you get to hear from a lot of people from that original movie and how things played out and how, wow, the movie almost didn't go anywhere. But it was really, really cool to see that and to see how things played out. That was probably my favorite feature on the whole thing. This is also a pretty big spoiler, but I do want to mention it. Rosario Dawson is probably, I don't know, she's great in this, in the parts that she plays. They are great, and I gotta say, brought tears to my eyes multiple times during the movie. In fact, the whole movie really just was really emotional for me. But her scenes in particular were just beautifully, beautifully done, and it's probably, at least for me, it was the most I've ever really, really liked Rosario Dawson. I know that sounds weird because she's pretty good. She's pretty good in everything I've seen her in. But in this one, she just, there's something about it. I really connected with what she was putting on screen, and yeah, she was really, really good. So yeah, Clerks 3. I mean, I overall really enjoyed it, even though I have problems with it. It's not perfect by any stretch, but I really enjoy it when Kevin Smith, brings his own experiences into his films, and I think that he did a really, really good job here. I'm kind of curious if anybody's seen it, what you thought of it. I mean, I was looking at some stuff online, and people were actually angry at Kevin Smith for some of the decisions he made. There was a lot of all over the place on Clerks 3. So I'm kind of curious what you think. Let me know down below. We'll talk about it. So thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.